But similar to what I talked about fasting, there are hundreds of millions of cultures around our world. And within each culture, unique eating customs. Some similar customs, some drastically different customs. So for us to say that there's one true, absolute way to eat, well, you're kind of taking one little small part of the globe and saying they know best and everybody else is wrong. Canada and USA, top left-hand corner, meet the rest of the world. I mean, we do have lots of people who are healthy and unhealthy, eating in lots of different styles. I mean, we're certainly not going to sit here in this room and say that top left-hand corner is the healthiest part of the world. And obviously the least obese, because it's just not true. So the way we're eating does not necessitate that that's the way everybody has to eat. Dinner. I just used this example. We've all heard the idea that you should not eat late at night. Now for us, we like to pretend dinner is around 5. And really, we're all in traffic at 5. I mean, dinner's probably around 6, it's 6:30. It's probably rushed. You're probably, scrambling something together for you and possibly the kids because you got something to do that night. I mean, it's taken on a whole different meaning here. Italy, Spain, Portugal, that area of the world, dinner starts at 9, maybe 10. And it's certainly not something you just sort of cram down your throat so you can get out the door. It goes to 11, 11:30. Very different. This is a group of people that we consider to be healthy. We actually look up to them and in their lifestyle. And in Canada, there's 30 million people. Combine the populations of Spain, Italy, and Portugal, about 110. So it's not like we outnumber them, they don't know any better. It's a completely different culture, showing us that unique and different styles of eating can easily fit into a healthy lifestyle. Yeah, fun one. I love this one, lunch. Wow, have we changed what lunch was. We didn't used to have lunch. In fact, breakfast, dinner used to be flip-flopped, and lunch was a sort of weird thing that was just introduced back when women were dainty creatures, and you were prone to fainting. So to prevent you from fainting in the middle of the day, you're allowed to have a nunch or a nuncheon snack, which is about the amount of food that would fit into the palm of your hand. Take a look at the palm of your hand. I mean, some of us have bigger or smaller hands, but just, what, a couple almonds, maybe a vegetable. That would be a lunch. Right now, we wouldn't even count that as a meal. And if you think about what lunch has become, that's a 6-inch. What's a foot long with double meat? I mean, Shaq's not fitting that in his hand, neither are any of us. But we've added in an extra meal, which is amazing because we've added another time that we can purchase and consume food. Right? And in fact, if we could, what a great way to drive a market, but to tell you not only is breakfast super important, so is lunch and dinner and your 3 or 4 snacks. In fact, there's really, everybody here is doing themselves a major disservice by not eating right now because, well, if you did and you went and bought my product, I'd be making money. Right? So that's the general idea of the food industry you have to remember is to force us to consume things. I mean, think about the kind of sales that go on at fast food places. I'm sure somewhere right now you can get that plus another sub for half price. Right? Like they just want you to consume more. And we allow this to kind of sneak into our own personal culture, and that sort of begins to dictate what we eat. So when should we eat? Well, the interesting thing about when we should eat is this has changed dramatically. And it's based on the workday, 9 to 5. Breakfast has become the most important meal of the day simply because it's usually the only one we have time for. Lunch is usually packaged and or purchased. Dinner is mostly quick and dirty. I mean, you just throw something together, feed the family, and then you're on with your day. So breakfast is important only because it's the only one we have time for. Culture, eating customs, again. So these are the demands of your lives dictating how you eat. And topped on that is the support of the food industry picking and choosing areas that they need to promote to keep us eating and keep us purchasing things. This is what is affecting what we view as proper eating right now. It's just based on necessity of our lives combined with very aggressive marketing and very aggressive advertising that we're just constantly being bombarded with. But see, there's exceptions to our rules, and this is the part that's very confusing, is we don't want to admit this. We want to think that the way we eat creates optimal health. We're going to live forever. We're going to look like we're in our 30s until we're in our hundreds and tens, and nothing's ever going to go wrong because we ate great. But there are people who defy these rules. This example is a group of people who eat very little fruits and vegetables, certainly very little lean meat. Most of their food is corn gruel, some sort of oatmeal, and tea. And I literally mean like tea is like a third meal for these people. It's tea all the time. If you were to look at this and the amount of calories they're eating and the breakup of it, you'd probably say, well, these people are going to be obese, possibly diabetic. I mean, it's not something we would consider healthy. But they are Kenyan long-distance runners who are studied in Africa by Dr. Yanis Pitsouladis and his group out of Scotland, of all places. That's how they eat. They are constantly the world's top endurance athletes. You can take anybody, practically, who's been a great endurance athlete and trace their lineage back to Kenya. So they're performing at an elite level, a level that I can possibly imagine performing at, eating a meal that most of us would consider to be substandard and probably lead you to being some sort of debilitated couch potato. Now, I know some of us right now are probably looking at them going, "Hey, but Brad, they're kind of skinny." Right? So obviously that has something to do with their food. Well, possibly not, because they share a meal, very, very similar diet plan, to elite sprinters who mostly come from Nigeria. That's not the best picture, but I guarantee you that guy's in pretty good shape. But again, I mean, we're looking at a meal that we would consider to be substandard. These diets are, from a North American dietetics point of view, substandard. Yet they're performing at an elite level. Interesting, the Kenyans, most of their food comes from this corn gruel. Nigerian sprinters get most of their carbohydrate source, which makes up the majority of their meal, from the one plant that is fourth on the list of carbohydrate sources for all humans all across the world. Anybody have an idea what it is? Cassava. Tapioca. Who knew? Yeah, tapioca is one of the fourth highest source of carbohydrates for the entire human population on Earth. And I don't even think I've tried it. I mean, tapioca pudding. But that's what they live off of. So a perfect example of where these people, not only is it not diet preventing them from performing at an elite level, but also the way their body looks is probably more dependent on how they train than what they eat. So perfect examples of high human performance on what we consider substandard diets. We also have markers of health. This isn't just about performance. Everybody's heard about the Inuit and how they eat tons of fish oil, and that's why they have virtually no cardiovascular disease, or some version of that story. So we say, well, obviously, then fish oil is fantastic for you. The thing that a lot of people don't mention is that they also eat almost no fruits and vegetables. So huge protection, much better, much lower rate of incidence of cardiovascular disease than probably any of us or any of our families. Eat very little fruits and vegetables. Might be changing a bit now as they're becoming more industrialized, but at the time that research was done, that was the finding. So again, examples of people eating outside of what we consider to be perfect, but having health benefits and high athletic performance. Which begs the question then, is our obsession, and that word is bold and red for a reason, is our obsession with healthy eating justified? Because what I want to talk to you today about is when sensibility becomes obsession. The information we're constantly bombarded with and our fascination with diet and nutrition is creating a North American obsession. In fact, it's often joked about for the rest of the world that the fattest countries in the world are the ones most obsessed with healthy nutrition. Go figure. So what I want to say is that obsessive compulsive eating is something we all need to be very aware of. This is the part where it's going to be slightly uncomfortable, to grab my water, only because you're going to see some sort of reflection of yourself in some of these slides, because I know that I see myself in some of these slides. The key to remember, it's not the habits we're about to talk about, it's the mental effect of these habits. It is the obsession, it is the compulsion. So we'll keep that in mind as we go through these slides. Obsessive compulsive eating is an unhealthy obsession with eating healthy. It's kind of ironic and kind of twisted, but it makes a lot of sense. When we let our food and the way we eat begin to define us, when we start setting up dozens of rules as ways to eat, we're starting to miss out on the true ideology of holistic health, which is everything. Everything Craig talked about when we first got here was about the psychology of understanding who you are and setting yourself with ground rules and forcing yourself to move forward. You cannot do that if you're obsessing over food and believing that there are magic foods or certain foods have amazingly healthy benefits that other foods do not. What is wrong with OCE is it gets to the point where it affects your mood and your sense of self-worth. And if that's not bad enough, for most people, that's happening and you're not even getting the weight loss you've been promised. So you get into a very tricky situation where you're obsessing about food, you're giving food this giant crown, putting up on a pedestal where certain foods are very good for you, certain foods are very bad for you.